nothing but the truth.
Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa of India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will focus on key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. Every year, there is a poisonous haze that descends on the national capital region. In November alone, Delhi saw 11 severe air days with an air quality index of over 390 that put it in the severely hazardous category. The air quality index is a measure of 8 pollutants, and these include 6 noxious gases like nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, and lead. Apart from that, there is particulate matter of different sizes that are thrown up by chemicals, smoke, and dust. They are defined by their diameter for air quality regulatory purposes. And just to give you an example, the tiniest of these particles, which is PM as particulate matter 2.5, are 30 times thinner than a strand of human hair and can easily enter our bodies through our airways and clog our lungs. The AQI measures two types of particulate matters, PM 2.5 and PM 10, and the overall measurement of both gases and particulate matter are done by monitoring stations across many cities in India as well as in other places as well. And the unit is micrograms per cubic meter. And why I'm telling you all that is because you must understand an AQI level or air quality index level above 100 micrograms per cubic meter are considered hazardous. So, of the 242 cities for which the Central Pollution Control Board or CPCB released data on November 14th, just 2 days after Diwali, the air quality in only 40 of them were either satisfactory or good. As many as 200 of our cities fell into the serious and severely hazardous category in terms of the air quality index evolved by the Pollution Board. Not just Delhi, all the major metros, whether Mumbai, Chennai, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Kolkata, and a whole lot of other cities across the country, the AQIs were hazardous. And this is not a phenomenon that is happening only this year. This is extremely worrying, and why we need to focus is because there's been a state of new research, both in India and abroad, to show how pollution is taking a toll not just of our lungs, but also severely impacting our brain, the heart, kidneys, and pancreas, and can even now cause diabetes and cancer. Studies show that the current levels of pollution, particularly the particulate pollution, can shorten the average Indian's life by 5.3 years in most cities, and in Delhi by at least 12 years. Just think about that. You're going to live less in other cities by 5 years from your normal survival rates, and in Delhi by at least 12 years. So if your average rate is about 75, you're down to 63, because if you live in Delhi, that's the kind of damage it could do to your lungs and other key organs. And this is, as I mentioned, the heart, for instance, wasn't thought to be affected by pollution. That was the sort of common sense thing. But now studies show that long-term exposure to particulate matter and high levels of nitrogen oxide can age your blood vessels prematurely and contribute to a more calcium buildup in the coronary artery, and this can reduce flow of blood to the heart, precipitating strokes and heart attacks. Another thing that science has thrown up, and these are studies not just in India but across the world, is how pollutants can damage your brain. Studies have shown that even 2 hours of exposure to diesel pollution decreases the functional connectivity of the brain, and this manifests mostly in poor memory recall, most worryingly among children who are known to be, when they are studying, to fall behind in academics, and this could be one of the major reasons that is causing it. All these are alarming findings, and yet, despite successive governments at the center as well in the states launching measures to improve the air quality of their cities, but as we know, the crisis keeps getting worse. Realizing that the situation was getting out of hand and calling for a sustained action, The Narendra Modi government launched the National Clean Air Program in January 2019, and the plan was to improve the air quality in 131 cities where the air pollution levels exceeded permissible levels. Mind you, 131 cities. And they wanted to bring it down to the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. They spent or have committed close to rupees 20,000 crores until 2026. So if you take, it's an average about 4,000 crores that they are spending per year, or even less, 3,500. And all this was allotted to the project. The idea was that the center, along with independent experts from institutions like the IIT, worked with state governments and civic bodies in these cities to come up with individual airshed plans to monitor, analyze, and control the main sources of pollution, whether it's vehicular emissions, construction activity, road dust, garbage disposal, or thermal or industrial pollution. Midway into the plans, the center claims that 90 cities have shown improved air quality and 15 of them have met the required air quality standards. I spoke to Leena Nandan, who is the Secretary, Union Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, and she monitors the entire national program on this. And she told me, and I'm quoting her, we realized that we couldn't have a one-size-fits-all approach, so each city was asked to come up with an airshed approach, airshed, that is a word to note, airshed approach that has a technical appreciation of its unique circumstances and also problems on how to deal with them. She says, we have achieved much, but there is still a lot of distance to cover. And indeed, there is. Now, let's define the various kinds of pollution and see what we can do with it, what needs to be done on an urgent basis. And there was an analysis done by McKinsey in October last year, and they broke down the various factors contributing to pollution, the major factors, and deduced that the power sector accounted for as much as 34%, industry including the construction sector 28%, agriculture 17.8%, and the transport segment 9% of the problem of pollution. These may be ballpark estimates because they will vary in individual cities or airshed regions, because sometimes in Delhi, for instance, there could be a higher amount of agriculture pollution given its closeness to Punjab and Haryana, especially during November, where the stubble burning is there. In other cities, it could be transport. In others, could be a power plant. Combating these major sources of pollution need both short-term and long-term measures. So let's go one by one and see what can be done in these four major sources of pollution and get the government and the civic bodies to act on them rapidly before not only we die, but our children get seriously affected. Let's start with transport. To give you some numbers, there are something like, the numbers can be really mind-numbing. There are 210 million two-wheelers, 70 million four-wheelers. And if you add the number of commercial trucks and everything else that ply across the country, it could be close to 350 million vehicles that are doing that. Now, especially in cities, vehicular emission is the number one cause of pollution. And the real reason is that the exhaust pipes of vehicles emit what is called a deadly cocktail of fumes and particulate matter that include dangerous oxides of nitrogen and sulfur, besides air toxics such as carbon monoxide and even benzene. The first measure that India took to regulate tailpipe emissions of air pollutants was way back in 2000. They formed what is called the Bharat Stage Emission Standards, or BS standards. And these were modeled after the European Union norms for emissions. It took at least 20 years before they leapfrogged, and India leapfrogged in April 2020 into what was called the BS4, Bharat Standard 4 and Bharat 6 Standard emissions for implementation. Now, the current standards are similar to what the European Union has in terms of EU 6 norms. And under these new norms, a vehicle should emit at least 80% less particulate matter for every kilometer that it travels. So just to give you, if you break that up, the sulfur content in a fuel, whatever fuel you're using, if it's petrol, it will drop fivefold from 50 parts per million to 10 parts per million. Nitrogen dioxide fumes from diesel cars, for instance, have to drop by 70% and 5% in petrol cars. So there has been a major movement, and in fact, from April 1st, automakers have to switch to a more stringent version, that is the BS6 Phase 2. That makes it even more stringent and brings down the tailpipe emissions by car makers fitting filters and other things to reduce these poisonous gases. It is an expensive affair, and the cars can cost 50,000 rupees or more, but it is a price worth paying for the kind of damage, and if you can prevent that damage that it does to your body, the amount of pollution that can be contained will help us considerably. The second measure is this vehicle scrapping policy. Those in Delhi would be very familiar that the Supreme Court banned diesel vehicles that were 10 years old and petrol ones that were over 15 years, all from plying across Delhi roads. Now the centre is mandating it across most of the states across in the country. And the idea is, if you can get rid of these vehicles, there are rules being formulated that government vehicles, particularly buses and others that are more than 15 years old, should be retired. And this could help in reducing the pollution. Altogether, the estimate is that close to 5 million vehicles will be off the roads in the next 10-15 years because of these measures. But the real problem is implementing the strict vehicular pollution norms, and this is left to the hands of states and civic bodies. And we all know how when we go to, I'm not making any allegations, but when you go to petrol stations to check, how cursory that check could be. And we don't know if all the cars and scooters and everybody are doing the genuine checks that are there to ensure that they keep their emission levels down or get their vehicles fine-tuned. So this is a problem that needs to be tackled. The third measure which the government has took was, and that's a good measure, was incentivizing the use of electric vehicles or EVs. And if you look, what the government did was, the central government was to provide generous subsidies for manufacturers under what they call the Faster Adoption and Manufacturing of Hybrid Electric Vehicles, acronym FAME2, and they budgeted rupees 10,000 crores. So far, more than 1.1 million vehicles have been supported under FAME2, that's electric vehicles, EV vehicles. But let us say that there is a long way to go. If you look, the sales of EV vehicles contributed only 5.6% of the total vehicle sales in 2023. There are other issues with EV vehicles that need to be sorted out. Poor charging infrastructure. So if you don't have chargers, points to go from, say, in cities, and you run out of it, there's a problem. So people are, that's a disincentive to buy these vehicles. And also the higher price tags compared to conventional vehicles in the same category. So in the longer term, while these are three good solutions that have been given, reducing emission levels from tailpipes, cutting down the number of old vehicles, as well as switching to EV vehicles, there is no better long-term solution than to encourage the public in big cities to use the mass transportation system to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. And if you have been to cities like New York or London or any of the big cities across, international cities across the world, even some of the most well-to-do people will not travel by car but use the subway or other forms of transport that might be available, whether metro rails and other electric trains that are available for them. That is something that we need to be looking at that is money worth spending if cities do that, because it will take vehicles off the road and reduce the amount of pollution that is there. Delhi, and the good thing also is that the buses, apart from metro rails, if they're not enough, buses also are to be converted into electric vehicles. And Delhi, for instance, is looking to induct 950 electric buses. And this August, very significantly, just 2 months back or 3 months back, the central government launched the Prime Minister's e-bus Seva. And the aim is to procure 10,000 e-buses in 169 cities in the next couple of years. These are good measures, but still a lot more has to be done. But let's move to the second big source of air pollution, and that is thermal power plants. In fact, India has a very difficult choice ahead of it. While advanced nations, and right now COP28 is underway and about to finish, they have been calling for a phasing out of coal altogether as a fuel source in order to keep global warming under check. India has come under increasing pressure to do so, but it can't turn the tap off easily. And the reason is because coal-generated power meets 75% of the country's electricity needs currently. And just to give you an idea of the figures that are there, at present India has 267 thermal power plants that generate over 230 gigawatts of power, which out of that, close to 200 gigawatts is coal-fired alone, and the rest is from oil and gas. So we are highly dependent. As I said, 75% of our electricity requirements is met by thermal power plants. But therein lies the problem. The coal combustion emits large amounts of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide, both very poisonous, apart from toxic particulate matter that hangs in the atmosphere. And this is one of the major reasons of a poisonous smog which descends on cities. And this could cause major respiratory trouble for humans, apart from the other dangers I mentioned to you about the heart, the brain, the kidneys, pancreas. All these pollutants do damage other vital organs as well. Now, there has been some move to try and clean up the act over there. In Delhi, for instance, in the NCR region, the coal-fired plants, there are 11 of them surrounding the national capital, and they were supposed to comply with the emission norms. But despite the Environment Ministry telling them to bring down the level of both sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide that they emit, they have, and these were revised norms in 2015. A recent study by the Center of Science and Environment showed that only 2 of them complied with the requirements despite various reminders and notices that have gone out. Now, just to give you a background, to control sulfur dioxide emissions, for instance, thermal plants are required to install what is called a flue gas desulfurization, or FGD system. But the problem here is that, and most of the thermal power plants that I'd mentioned and I'd listed to you earlier, say that firstly it's an additional cost, but that must be met because they are polluting the atmosphere. The second is the complex installation, and the third difficulty apparently is that the main source of equipment is from Chinese manufacturers. They dominate the so-called FGD equipment, and because after the post-Galwan skirmish that we've had with China, we are finding it difficult to have FGD equipment imported to India. We need to find urgently sources elsewhere and ensure that all the thermal plants that we have do have FGD funnels that will bring down the sulfur content. If you look at the way the Environment Ministry has done, it has in fact graded thermal plants across into category A, which Delhi belongs to, 1 million plus cities, and B and C, and they've asked them to start bringing down the levels of these noxious gases that they've done. They were supposed to do it by 2024, but they said COVID had come in between, and because of the FGD shortage that is there, now they are going to do it by stages, and so therefore the current target is going to be 2032 instead of 2024. Thermal power plants are committing that they will reduce their levels of noxious gases that they emit only by 2032. Now, this is when I believe we need to implement these norms on a war footing, because we wouldn't want thermal plants. While, yes, there is an imperative to have coal-fired plants, at least it is important that the government and those who are generating power invest money in bringing down pollution that causes all the illnesses that we have, because that is an enormous price to the health that cannot be measured. The third major source of pollution is construction activity. In fact, Mumbai joined Delhi this year in the dubious club of cities with dangerous air pollution levels, and they had to shut down a lot of their construction activity and issue guidelines to fortify construction sites. Now, despite the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation banning garbage burning and warning crackdowns against the 6,000 odd construction projects in the city, the norms were breached, and Mumbai experienced an AQI level of 245 on November 13, a day after Diwali, which put it into the severe and seriously hazardous category. Now, Mumbai is known to have greater advantages than Delhi because there's sea breeze blowing, and yet Mumbai fell into this problem. Apart from that, one of the things, it's just not Mumbai. that is a problem. Across major cities, including Delhi, there is uncontrolled construction activity that is going on. There's a huge infrastructure boom. And what happens is that when construction is allowed to happen, and of course it should happen, there is a lot of dust from masonry work. There's tunneling, there's road milling, there's cement and concrete mixing. And there is also, when you cut through sandstone and granite, you can see the dust plumes going up. So this adds to the particulate matter pollution, and that's very serious for the lungs and other parts of the body. And if you look at Delhi also, and in other cities, there's a huge construction boom that I was mentioning. For instance, in the national capital region, the estimates are by Terry that construction activity will go up by 82% by 2030 as compared to now. That's a phenomenal amount. The center has moved in to kind of control this level of pollution, particularly in cities. And they have prescribed in 2016 what is called the construction and demolition waste management rules. And they've laid down do's and don'ts for developers. These include very simple things like covering construction sites, sprinkling water to suppress dust in the air, and covered transportation of construction material. You know, those open trucks that have those sand put onto them and that blows across and that causes it. And these are just some of the simple measures that we as citizens should know that have been mandated, and we must insist on that happening to it. Also, there are detailed, specifications for recycling a lot of these things of the waste that is there, particularly for garbage, where garbage is being dumped. We have seen all these huge dumps that are there that generate a lot of pollution, and these the municipal corporations are extremely lax when it comes to this kind of pollution that's there. Whether it's in Delhi, whether it's Mumbai, each of these are violative of the norms that are there. Of course, Delhi has an advantage, and that is something that not an advantage, but at least started moving and to taking strict action against pollution. And Delhi and the National Capital Region has something called a Commission for Air Quality Management. And what it does is it lays down what is called a Graded Response Action Plan, or GRAP, which empowers it to take action based on AQI levels. So you could move from grade 1 or then grade 2 and then go up to, GRAP 2, and then go right up to GRAP 4 if it gets very serious. And when you're coming into this Graded Response Action Plan, when it reaches the serious stage, you can ban construction activity in a particular city and even close schools and all activity till the pollution levels decrease. So that is something many cities need to take care of. There are, of course, as I mentioned earlier, all the things of watering these construction sites, bring down the dust level. And most importantly, you could look at prefab technology where concrete blocks are prefabricated in factories and transported to the sites rather than doing the conventional building. These are measures that are needed urgently. And let's come to the final aspect of what we say are the 4 major causes of pollution. There are many more causes, but we are focused on 4 of them, and that is agriculture. And this particularly impacts major parts of North India, including the National Capital Region. We all know the burning of paddy stubble by the farmers of Punjab to prepare their land for sowing for the next wheat crop for the Rabi season has long contributed to what is called the haze hood, as it is known over Delhi and its environments. This actually has its origin in 2010 when Haryana and Punjab farmers were told to delay the paddy sowing season by a month due to a severe drinking water shortage during summer. So the idea was that postpone it. They had the Kharif crop, which was to be harvested in November, actually earlier, harvested in September and early October, but by delaying it by a month, they now had to harvest it in November. Therefore, you will find that the moment they start burning stubble, both Delhi and the NCR has this huge haze across. And the real problem is also it's topological or even geographical in some senses, right? Topography is specific and in terms of geography. If you look at Delhi, it's a kind of a bowl, and so is the Indo-Gangetic Plains, which is at a lower level. And what happens is that when the pollution comes, because the Gangetic Plains are a low-lying area and Delhi is a bowl, they tend to stay unless there is, and it acts as like a sink for the smog, unless there is strong winds or rains that relieve Delhi of its particulate matter miseries that is causing. There have been studies to show how bad the problem is, and even this year, data from the Indian Agriculture Research Institute's satellite monitoring division showed that there were as much as 35,350 crop residue burning events in 2023 alone, and 65% of these crop burnings were in Punjab. So those numbers are important. 35,350 crop residue burnings that they have seen, and 65% from Punjab. We're not blaming Punjab, but that's the extent of it. Now, their estimate is that 10 million tons of stubble is still burned every year. And you can imagine how much of smog and dust and particles that they send across to the entire region. The central government has tried, and the idea was to promote what they call the agricultural mechanization for management of crop residue. And Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and Delhi were given, from 2019 onwards, subsidized farm equipment to deal with it. Now, these farm equipments are called the happy seeders and super seeders. They not only pull out the stubs rather than burn the stubs, but they convert them into bales, which also helps better seeding once that happy seeder works. These bales are then carted to power plants where they can be used to generate biomass fuel. So it's a nice circular economy that had been evolved. And according to the Agriculture Ministry, something like 120,000 seeder machines were made available to farmers in Punjab, and also around 76,000 to those in Haryana. Now, the centre is also trying to get the states to, ensure that the circular economy of converting these paddy straws into bales and then converting it, sending off to fuel, to factories, so that they can be used for biomass fuel. And that will help farmers earn income. But these remain in various stages of implementation. And just to give you an idea of the magnitude of the challenge and how much it is there, together these plants can only process 1.4 million tons of straw, whereas Punjab farmers alone produced 22 million tons of stubble annually. That's the magnitude of the problem that we are still looking at. There have been measures, there's no doubt about that. Especially the Supreme Court has been pretty stringent on Delhi as well as on Punjab, and the governments have been advised to sensitize farmers to end the stubble burning pattern and switch to other crops. But as we know, crop diversification has never been taken up at a large scale by farmers for various reasons, and one of the main reasons is that there is a minimum support price for paddy and for wheat, whereas if they grow other crops, they do not have that safety net. And the government does not backstop them. Though there are MSP prices for a lot of them, they feel very reassured growing paddy and wheat rather than horticultural crops and other cotton and everything else. So it's very important that both the centre and state governments come to tackle with these. We have dealt, this is a large subject, we have dealt with all the four major aspects of, the major causes of air pollution across the country, whether it's traffic, whether it is construction activity, whether it's thermal plants, and of course agriculture. A lot is being done. No one is saying no. This is not the argument that that nothing is being done. In fact, in the last 10 decades, there has been a lot of action, both from the central and state governments, but they are not enough. They have been found wanting on various regards. They need greater urgency, and there has to be what we call a collective will of the government, individuals, industry, builders and cultivators, that we all have to come together and take action and deliver ourselves from this evil, this poisonous air that hangs on all our cities and is causing damage not only to us individually, but our next generation. This is an urgent crisis. This is an SOS that we need to deal with. Otherwise, we would have an even more deeper crisis on our hands in the years ahead. For more details, you could read the latest issue of India Today magazine that has an in-depth report on the subject written by my colleagues. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week.
Nothing but the truth.